Hi, good evening. Welcome to the Open World Forum TV studio. Tonight we have Florian Feldhaus, who is researcher at GWDG, and Andy Edmunds, who is a senior researcher at Zurich University of Applied Science. We are speaking of standard on the cloud. So you are a member of a big committee which is working on standard. And today you had a meeting during the Open World Forum. So, Florian, can you tell me what you're doing exactly and what committee are you driving?
Hello, I'm a researcher at the GWDG and I'm working to construct or build a cloud architecture for the German research institutes, for the Max Planck Institutes. And also I'm involved in the Open Cloud Computing Interface Working Group. As a core contributor, I'm developing a implementation for OCCI and drive forward standards, standardization, and standards interoperability.
Andy?
So again, I'm a senior researcher at Zurich University of Applied Sciences. There I operate inside a laboratory called the ICC Lab, and in the ICC Lab we do a lot of work on cloud computing, and one of the particular areas where I'm involved in is in infrastructure as a service. As part of that, I actually operate as one of the co-chairs in the OCCI working group as well as run out of OGF.
So you have been at the initiative of at the beginning of a committee,
Correct.
standard committee on IAAS.
That's right.
Can you tell me what you're doing? How long have you been working on this committee?
So OCCI started perhaps 2.5 years ago. It originally started from a whole bunch of people that saw that there was a need for standardization with this new thing called cloud, and more particularly infrastructure as a service. At that time, however, infrastructure as a service was too early to be standardized, yet nonetheless there was the interest to investigate that area. And so it was through OCCI that we began that work, and it still continues today.
So where are you today? What is a major issue? You have some de facto standard. What are they?
Okay,
and
yeah.
you are trying to set up a new standard, which is going to be an open source standard.
Sure. So in the world of standardization, you either have de facto or you got de jure. De facto is actually dictated by the market, and today the de facto is Amazon EC2. It would be wonderful to be able to go and suggest to governments that yes, Amazon EC2 is the way to go. However, when we look at Amazon EC2, although they've got the biggest developer ecosystem, and that's really important, nonetheless, the actual API itself, albeit it's open, there's no open standardization process around it. And that's one of the key issues that OCCI will tackle. And OCCI comes in not as the first and foremost API when it comes to infrastructure as a service, but rather the second. OCCI is the API of interoperability insurance, as we would say. Interoperability is a risk that needs to be managed. For an example, if I have my deployments on cloud A and I wish to move to cloud B, how do I do it with minimal expense and retooling and recoding? How do I do that? How do I manage that risk? And this is where OCCI comes into the picture.
So Florian, you're working on this too. What are the issues for you?
Currently, the main issue with OCCI is that we need to provide the right tools, which I'm working on, doing implementations of the client side, the server side, and getting people to really easily adopt the API. And we are working on getting the different cloud infrastructure or service providing tools, which we see there, OpenStack, CloudStack, to adopt OCCI and give people the choice to have an interoperable API, which they can use regardless of EC2, so that they have a choice.
So you mentioned interoperability. So what is it, interoperability in infrastructure?
So this is an interesting one. For us, from the OCCI perspective, interoperability means to have that consistent API that's placed against all cloud providers. Okay, that's the one thing that OCCI is concentrated very much on and does very, very well. One of the things when it comes to standardization, it's very difficult to extend a standard. Standard tends to take the lowest common denominator. With OCCI, we've developed it in mind that extension is a necessity. Extension is a means to expose innovation through standardization. And that's one thing that OCCI excels at. It's absolutely wonderful. Florian mentioned about tooling. OCCI has got a huge amount of support throughout the open source communities. In the open source world, when we look at infrastructure as a service, we have OpenStack, we have OpenNebula, we've got Eucalyptus, we've got CloudStack. And many of those actually have implementations of OCCI. So there you can actually interoperate across all those various stacks. One of the big challenges, however, is in portability and moving those workloads between the various different clouds. And that's where the likes of OVF that comes out of DMTF comes into play.
So you are developing tools to allow interoperability
Yes, that's right.
into the different stacks and what did you bring during your session today? What did you bring?
The one important thing was to see which standards are out there, how you can connect these standards together to get to an open cloud infrastructure at some point. Yeah. So the European Commission just released their cloud strategy, and they very much stress the fact that they want to have standards adopted. And we were discussing which these standards might be, if it's OCCI, if it's other standards, and how these standards could work together to provide a cloud standards landscape.
Who are the stakeholders in your committee, in your OCCI?
That's easy. It's the users. Yeah. We have several users. Everyone is able to participate. We have several companies which send people to us. But it's more like everyone who wants to use OCCI can join us, participate in the specification.
Who are they? Big companies?
Yeah, there's quite a number of large companies involved in OCCI. Many of them they come out from the more research end, because for them, standardization is itself to adopt a standard right now is seen to be perhaps too early. We had discussions actually in the group whether or not standardization within cloud is too early. For most of the service delivery model in cloud, it is too early. However, infrastructure as a service seems to be a prime candidate right now for standardization. So an example of various companies that have engaged in OCCI in the past and currently still today, from let's say a speculative point of view, would be the likes of Intel. Citrix has been there too. Who else can you think of right now?
What about, I think VMware?
VMware. Exactly. And to mention on that, the co-chairs, it's not just myself, there's also Thijs Metz from Intel, and there's also Alexis Richardson.
What is the position of the governments in this?
The governments really want to have standards adopted. They want to have certification schemes, and they really want to give a better competition in the market. Currently, we see Amazon having 80-90% of the market dominated with their infrastructure services. And the European Commission wants to create standards that other competitors can get a chance to offer their services, and therefore we need standards.
So is it Europe against Amazon?
No, it's not Europe against Amazon. No. It might be Amazon, that the Amazon EC2 interface gets adopted by others, like Eucalyptus, an open source tool, rebuilds the EC2 interface. It's more about giving the choice to the customers to use whatever tool and whatever API they want to use to help the competition.
Are you developed some interoperability with EC2 also?
We already developed a tool where you can map OCCI to EC2. And you can use EC2 through OCCI.
And what Amazon says about that?
I think they ignore it because we're not on a large enough scale. But it's really about a user can decide to use OCCI, and we have the European grid infrastructure with lots of compute resources in Europe. They provide OCCI, and they have different implementations. They might use EC2, they might use commercial offerings, they might use OpenStack. But all is available through OCCI, and that's the second API.
And just to give you an idea of the scale in EGI, we've got approximately 60 participants, 23 different organizations, and there's approximately 15 resource providers, all in this, geographically dispersed across all of Europe. And the task that they had was to bring all these guys together to talk not only a common language, French, German, English, etc., and that's an interoperability issue in itself, but also at a technical level. How do you actually get such amounts of resources in an interoperable cloud? And OCCI figured heavily there.
So what is the major, what did you take out of this session you had today?
Yeah, okay, so one of them was actually, right now, de facto is winning in the world of cloud standards, okay? The question with regards to the de facto standard is whether or not that can be addressed with an open process. That's a key issue there. If it can't, then there's a question of what's next, and potentially we'll see those answers coming out of the European cloud strategy process that's happening currently today. Today also we talked about the government's role.
Yep.
The government's role from the external perspective, okay, should be to foster the adoption of cloud standards, to lead by example, to recommend perhaps, certainly not to mandate, and to be effectively look after the best interests of their citizens. Okay, so where their data is stored, the various things of that. Internally, however, for a government itself, in terms of procurement, that's where they have the power to mandate and lead by example yet again.
Yeah. Okay. So, last question: Where are you going to be next year?
We're going to be back here showing even better,
we
cool
expect.
stuff at OCCI,
But
right?
with what in mind?
With what in mind?
I think we can show much more major implementations. This year we got the implementations ready, and next year we can show the adoption. And especially with Compatible One, a very large French project, they are completely setting on OCCI. They're doing everything with OCCI, and that's a great example. And I think that gets picked up by other companies, and that's really something which generates interest from the market. And I think we get some market pickup from OCCI.
Okay, thank you very much. We will be very happy to see you next year. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you
Thank you very much.